that walks among us, a predator that ruined families. And if not for the members of this task force, he would still be out in the streets today. However, even with this arrest, we're not done. There's more work to do in this investigation regarding the other victims.
All right. Suspect now has been arrested and charged in the Gilgo Beach murders. That was a press conference earlier from the Suffolk County Police Department. The suspect's wife was found on 3 of the Gilgo Beach victims. Evidently, there were also torture-related searches done by the man you see there, 59-year-old Rex Huberman. It's been a pretty incredible case. These date all the way back to 2010. DNA from a discarded pizza crust was used to identify Huberman as a suspect. His wife was out of state when the 3 Gilgo Beach victims disappeared. That's important because the suspect's wife's hair was found in the burlap sacks that he had used. In addition, they found burner phones and records related to sadistic torture on the internet to link him to the types of crimes that had been committed and the frequenting of prostitutes as well, of which the 3 original victims were. With us now, forensic psychiatrist Carole Lieberman. Carole, appreciate you joining us. We had a neighbor of his on a couple of hours ago. I asked him, I said, look, on a scale of 1 to 10, how surprised were you that this is the guy, right, that they arrested? He's an architect who lived in a nice suburban neighborhood. And the neighbor said a 16. Said, he seemed like a normal, albeit a little unfriendly fellow. Does that jive with the profile of this guy?
Well, a lot of what he did was in secret. I believe that he's a sexual sadist, both in real life and in terms of his consumption of porn and child torture and women torture and all of that. But, these are the kinds of things that obviously he kept to himself. There was something, though, that in the neighborhood, they told kids not to go to his house for Halloween. So, even though on the one hand they say he seemed like a normal guy, on the other hand, they're sensing something for why they're telling the kids not to go there.
Yeah, people realized there was something wrong. Also, we understand that there was some feelings that his house was in disrepair and didn't match that he was an architect, on and on and on. This was pretty interesting from the press conference. It speaks to, sadly, what you talked about, which is how the victims, the original 3 that he's been charged in, were all found. Take a listen.
In a 14-month period, he had over 200 searches pertaining to the Gilgo investigation. Not only was he looking at investigative insight, he was trying to figure out how is the task force using cell phones to try to figure out what's happening. What are the developments with regard to the task force? And this really supported our decision to keep our investigative focus secret, because we knew that this one person would be watching. They were buried in a similar fashion, in a similar location, in a similar way. All the women were petite. They all did the same thing for a living. They all advertised the same way, and there were similarities with regard to the crime scenes. All the women were bound at the head, at the midsection, or at the chest, and later at the legs.
All right, so pretty gruesome details in terms of what these women endured. It speaks to what you talked about. But Gilgo Beach murder victims, there's 10 bodies that have been found there, and in pretty close proximity along this beach that's on the southern end of Long Island, southern side of Long Island, near where the bedroom communities are of New York City. Are we to believe really that somebody was a serial killer? They killed 3 or 4 people all the way back in 2010, and then for 13 years went, for lack of a better term, quiet?
Well, actually, one of them at least started even before 2010. The bodies were found in 2010, thanks to Shannon Gilbert, who called 911 and talked about, was screaming and panicking about they're after me and so on, which, by the way, they are not saying that this man is connected to her murder, and that might, in fact, be somebody else. But, this is a man who is very insecure about his own masculinity, needed to have women who were sex workers, who were petite, who he could overpower. And he talked in there's a video where he's talking with a French man from Bonjour Realty. And he talks about how the tool that he would like, the most useful tool, his father taught him how to make cabinets and so on. His most useful tool is a kind of hammer because it can be persuasive. And the interviewer said, persuasive of people, or, he was sort of implying of when you're making wood, when you're doing wood projects. But he even picked, it was so interesting that this was before, of course, and he picked up on this, this idea that this man wants to be persuasive, wants to control people. And, the difference between the years of, we don't know. I mean, one of the things that's really interesting is that he has continued to call for sex workers and to go to massage parlors and all that. So, we don't know. There might well be other bodies, or might well be other people who almost became dead bodies. So I don't know that in 10 years he was doing nothing.
Yeah, no, I guess that's the point, is that you said you didn't know. It feels like if someone is this evil, this depraved, and requires what you laid out and that sort of satisfaction, that it wouldn't stop 10 years ago. Carole, thank you very much. Disturbing in every way, but we're glad to have you take us through it. Thank you. President Biden.